If you are a person in Ireland who is in immediate need of a solution to your imminent housing problem, skip forward to the timestamp listed in the description below this video, titled One Possible Solution. Oh Jesus, it took out the last few weeks altogether, so it did. In a matter of like a week, this video somehow randomly shot up to over 300,000 views at time of filming after several weeks of just doing okay. And after a day or two, it started to dawn on me why the video was so popular all of a sudden. Quite a large number of people appeared to be hate watching it, and as I read through dozens of angry comments, the reason why became crystal clear. And it sort of was my fault. Yes, the house had been left empty for many years before I made the video by its local owner, and there were likely many reasons for this decision, among which were probably lack of demand in an area that had poor employment. The current owner has only recently inherited the home and was coming home to check out its condition and presumably to make plans, which is more than can be said for many of the empty homes around Ireland. And yes, I forgot to mention that John was a recent inheritor, but then it wasn't a video about the private business of the owners. It was just meant to be a look at the inside of a fairly well preserved cottage in Ireland. So the anger targeted at my comment section wasn't wrong, it was just a bit misguided in this particular case. And look, I feel you. I've been through the ringer on almost every front when it comes to housing. I fought to the death to keep a roof over my head for 15 years before we were lucky enough to buy this place. At times I faced homelessness in towns and villages full of empty houses that I wasn't allowed to live in for an endless amount of what seemed like stupid reasons. And the authorities didn't seem to want me creating a home for myself either. And in that time, the problem became bigger than me and my low income and lack of housing choices. The problem went national and beyond. So why are there so many empty houses and yet at the same time so many homeless people in Ireland? Is probably what I'd ask an economist if I had one to hand, which I don't. But from my own experience of literally asking everyone who'd listen why the house next door has been empty for so long, here are some of the things I've learned, and 5 of the main types of empty houses that I personally have encountered in different parts of Ireland. Type 1. Derelict cottages are very common in Ireland. In fact, a recent Geodirectory study tells us there are 21,140 of them scattered around towns and countrysides. Why are they derelict? Because they were left vacant too long. Why were they left vacant? For a variety of reasons. Here are some. A. The owner died and the property was inherited by a family member overseas. All efforts should have been made to contact said owner and inform them of this, and then perhaps they died, or hadn't the money to come to Ireland, or hire an estate agent, or maybe there was just little to no market demand in the area for such a property. Or maybe they're hanging on to it for some sense of family duty or other sentimental reasons. B. Sometimes a house is inherited by multiple siblings who fail to reach an agreement on what should be done with the place, and it just gets left to go to rack and ruin until they're all dead as well. C. Sometimes a property proves too difficult to get planning permission for. Irish planning departments have been described as being sort of a law unto themselves, and if you've got a site that has no room for a septic tank and no access to main sewerage, good luck trying to get planning permission to do anything with it. D. Renovating derelict cottages in Ireland is crazy expensive, and it happens all the time that properties get bought, the new owner runs out of money or realises it might be cheaper to buy a brand new house, and the house gets put up on the market again, and then the same thing happens. It happened to our house. And E, I mentioned it in part A, but I'm circling back because people don't seem to understand the importance of this factor. Ireland's current housing demand is unprecedented. The last time we had this amount of homeless people, there was a little thing called the Great Famine happening. This time, it's mainly just the culmination of a series of political decisions made to benefit the corporations who seem to really run the world by a government who seriously has to be one of the most corrupt in Europe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did I ever tell you about the time they threatened me with treason? Another video, Tara, get back to the point. So demand for housing is soaring right now, but in certain parts of Ireland, that's a recent phenomena. So recent, in fact, that every single person we met after moving to Leitrim asked us what had possessed us to move here, all the way from the East Coast. It was such big news that it made national headlines, and I was invited on every local radio station within a 50-mile radius to talk about it. And whilst we are far from the only people making moves like this, I can tell you that just 10, 20, 30 years ago in this exact same part of the country, things were very different. You moved away from places like Leitrim to places with more employment or marriage prospects. And it's really only since COVID, with the idea of working from home being normalised right across society, that we're starting to see a mass migration to the countryside, away from the expense of urban areas to a healthier and hopefully happier life. So the cottage I filmed and uploaded a few weeks back, which has brought in so many new subscribers, hello and welcome by the way, well, I'm willing to bet that 20 years ago, no one wanted to buy it. The owner married late and moved to another townland, and no one wanted to buy her family home. It wasn't useful to anyone. And now it's in dire need of some TLC. Don't worry, the new owner is on the case. Don't be hating. And also, if you are very concerned about the number of derelict cottages in Ireland, well, the Irish government is inviting you to put your money where your mouth is and buy one. And they're even promising you a nice wee bundle of grant money to help you do it. Having said that, a recent primetime investigation into the Croí Cónaithe grant found that only a quarter of vacant and derelict properties were financially viable to renovate for the financial sum being offered. Of course, if you have an extra 50 or 100 grand lying around after purchasing the property, that shouldn't be a problem for you, and you'll no doubt appreciate the governmental assistance. Actually, probably everyone who avails of it will. Great! Love that for you. Although reports seem to imply that the grant rollout was rushed due to the government needing some quick public opinion brownie points, it probably didn't hurt them at a time when they look like they're doing literally nothing to prevent mass homelessness. And in fairness, for the people who will benefit, it's not a bad move. Unfortunately, according to Primetime, only 4 successful applicants have actually drawn down the money after the first 13 months. There may be a number of reasons for this, including simple logistics. I mean, I'm definitely not here to defend the Irish government, okay? But there is quite a lot of nuance to the whole grant situation, so I'm gonna leave that for a separate video. Stay tuned. Right, so that pretty much covers derelict properties. Another category of empty houses you may encounter on the Irish landscape is a much smaller and simpler one. Homes built without proper planning permission. They're all over the place. Celtic Tiger boom time. Celtic Tiger boom time. Everyone who owned even a shoebox-sized piece of land was building houses and apartments like they were going out of style. And many of those didn't have the correct planning permission, and so they can't be lived in, they can't be sold, and they'd cost a lot of money to demolish. There don't seem to be official stats on how many such properties exist, but 6 of the properties that I've personally made inquiries into in about the past decade fall into this category. Type 3, similar to the last. The Celtic Tiger property game made it more desirable for, say, a farmer to turn a disused field with road frontage into a 4-bed dormer bungalow, just a 15-minute drive from the nearest town. And when the property bubble burst, nobody wanted the bungalow. And in some cases, it would appear that even now, in the midst of this mess, nobody wants it still. And if you discover such a home and you want it, you can find out who the owner is by putting in a property folio application with the Property Registration Authority or by visiting landdirect.ie. It doesn't cost very much. You're welcome. Type 4, Airbnb. This is not uniquely an Irish problem, so I'm not going to start banging on about gentrification. Our laws around short-term holiday lets have been tightened slightly in recent years, and they mainly seem to revolve around applying for planning permission and paying your taxes. But according to a recent article from the Irish Examiner, there are still 18,086 houses or apartments in livable condition in Ireland, which are not available for long-term tenancies or purchase because they're more profitable for short-term holiday lets. Like, that's nearly as many as we have derelict cottages. And 6,000 of these Airbnbs are multi-lets, i.e. they're owned by someone who owns multiple properties on Airbnb. And I personally had to leave a scenic tourist village where I lived and worked a few years back because I couldn't find housing, despite the fact that over 40% of the houses and apartments in that village were vacant for 3 to 6 months each year. Make it make sense! And speaking of things which make no sense whatsoever, let's talk about the 5th type of empty house: ghost estates. Bet you thought they were a thing of the past, like butter vouchers in the 1980s. Well, it turns out there are still 75 of them sitting idle since 2008, according to the Department of Housing. Estates, that is, not houses. And the Irish Times tells us that 53% of these housing estates remain unoccupied. And if that makes you angry, bear in mind that there would be more unfinished or vacant houses in ghost estates, except that some local authorities, desperate for a quick solution to the problem, took it upon themselves to demolish them. That's right, I said demolish. If you go into Street View on Google Maps, you can still see the spectre of the now demolished half of the Slee Corglass estate in County Longford. Click out to satellite view and they're gone. And the phrase ghost estate just went up 2 full notches on the creepometer. But it's not all doom and gloom on the ghostly landscape of Irish housing and lack thereof. I'm going to share with you now an article which has gotten me through many dark nights of wondering where I'd be living in a month's time. I made it my plan B in an effort to prevent having a stress-induced heart attack before the age of 30. I'll put a link to this article in the video description below for anyone who wants it, because there is a way, maybe even a legal way, to solve yours or a loved one's impending homelessness by taking possession of one of these homes. It's not for the faint of heart, but for some it's any port in a storm, and that's who I'm talking to now. For the rest of you, please leave your negative opinions on this tale of legal precedents out of my comment section, because I have no tolerance for it and I will immediately delete. So here goes. In County Offaly in 2011, this man, a separated father of 7, had been on the housing list for 5 years and was getting desperate. He saw 50 unoccupied homes in his local ghost estate and found that one of them had been left open. He moved in, got the electricity connected, put down flooring, painted the walls, and dealt with the damp problem which had manifested during the 3 years the house had sat vacant. When the guards came to remove him on behalf of state-owned NAMA, he calmly and honestly stated to them that he was claiming squatters' rights using adverse possession to the property. He was brought to court, the judge was shown photos of the property, the man offered to pay rent and arrears, and you know what happened? The judge gave him the house. Like, nah man, it's yours. Take the keys, go home and hang up some posters with blue tack, if you like. She threw the case in the bin. And that man owns that house to this day, as far as I can make out. Now, if you are thinking along similar lines, let's point out the key factors to this exact case which probably swayed the outcome a little bit. 1, he didn't break and enter. That is illegal, it won't go down well in court, it's a clear case of intent to commit a crime. Now, if the owner can't prove you broke and entered, perhaps there's room for leeway, but it would not be my first move. 2, the fact that this man had children probably did affect the judge's decision, even if it was only a wee bit. She wouldn't just have been making one desperate man homeless, she'd have been messing with his custody arrangements, because it's a bit harder to care for, entertain and feed 7 children for weekend visits if you live in a hostel. 3, the photos shown to the judge by the defence team definitely seemed to have helped. Well, they were mentioned in the article anyway. It was clear that the man had made the place livable and as comfortable as his meagre means would allow. He talked about taking pride in the home and how much it meant to both himself and his children. He actually improved the property from the state it had been left in and clearly wasn't using it as a nightclub or a dungeon or anything like that, and was just genuinely a man in need of housing and was willing to use the resources to hand and get up and solve his own housing problem. 4, he offered to pay rent. He was prepared to play ball to keep his house. He went into court thinking that at the very least the judge would be fair, give him a few weeks to find another place before kicking him out. Maybe if he was lucky, she'd let him pay rent and stay another while. Humility does go a long way in this kind of situation. 5, the fact that the property had been claimed by Nama. It wasn't some private person with their own story of hardship who brought the man to court. As far as I could make out, it was Nama, a state-owned assets management scheme designed to clean up some of the mess left in the wake of the public bank bailouts, which left ordinary people like me, you, this man, our children and grandchildren, their children and grandchildren in a hopeless situation. Ghost estates and vacant buildings were a hot topic at the time, and hardship was on the rise. The judge was obviously just having that kind of day where she'd had enough and decided to score one to the little guy. Would this tactic work again if you tried it tomorrow? There is probably no way to know that without really trying it. I can't say I'd have faith that every judge in the country would respect this legal precedent and rule the same way in a similar circumstance. In fact, this loophole may well already have been sewn up. 12 years is a long time in today's fast-paced legislative landscape. So ideally, you should be consulting a solicitor before even attempting to follow the course of action that this man did, though I do actually find it quite hard to imagine any solicitor in Ireland recommending it as a good idea. But the absolute most important thing to remember is that I am not a solicitor. I have zero legal training. I have never personally claimed or attempted to claim squatters' rights, and actually my thoughts on the whole thing are probably worth about as much as a short fart in a sharp wind. It's definitely not to be construed as legal advice, okay? I'm just a girl on YouTube sharing with you this one 12-year-old Irish news story which got me through many hard times, and maybe it'll do the same for someone else. And for those brave enough to proceed, may the gods go with you. And once again, for the people in the back, don't come up in my comment section shouting about squatters, especially if you don't even live in Ireland, or even if you do live here but have somehow managed to be lucky enough to not be affected by the housing crisis. Good for you, but we don't need to hear about it, okay? Irish culture usually favours the underdog, and campaigns like Home Sweet Home in 2016 and 17 and the Occupy movement of 2011 and 12 prove that. Even the longevity of protest campaigns such as Shell the Sea and the Tara Gathering tell us what side Irish bread is buttered on. By rights, the trolls should be evicted from under their bridges and see how they like it, but I digress. So those are the 5 main types of empty houses you're likely to encounter in Ireland, as far as I can see from here on my tiny little spot where I form my tiny little opinions. Do let me know if I left any out. I tried my level best to research the shit out of this. I wrote so many notes and I only used like 1/10 of them here. It was furiously watching primetime repeats and scribbling notes. It was so 2009. By the way, I'm doing another course for the Irish Pagan School in the last week of September. This time it's about how native plant species were historically being utilised around Halloween or Samhain in Ireland for magical and other purposes going back thousands of years. And also how you too can connect with these practices even if you don't live in a ghost estate. I don't know if the class is up on the IPS website yet, but the link to the last course I did with them is below in the video description, so you'll be able to find it from there. And if you stay tuned, I'll be giving more details out about that in the coming weeks. Also, big shout out and welcome to Eileen Craig, our newest channel member here at Diary of a Ditch Witch. Eileen joined at Balthana level. Thanks a million, Eileen, much appreciated. And if you're still watching, go on and give us an old like. It's a free way to support the channel so that at least when I do have the stress-induced heart attack, I'll be able to afford a few nights and a nice Airbnb in the mountains to recover. Aww. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more fun and ranty adventures. Until next time, Slán agus beannacht, goodbye and good luck to you. And dealt with the damp problem, which had meant... and... cat flap put the shit out of me, oh my god. Oh yeah. Le thumbnail just in case.